You never know where you're going to meet a person that is going to change the course of your career or your life or introduce you to a new concept.
Welcome to Working Women Mentor, a podcast where you will find a mentor moment in every episode. We are meeting incredible women from around the world with real stories and learning from the moment that changed it all for them. I'm your host, Rainey Alfers, and I'm ready to introduce you to our next guest. It's time for a quick sponsored ad from EMK Skincare. It's my skincare secret I swear by and love it so much, I bought the company. EMK was founded over 30 years ago in Beverly Hills and is crafted from science-backed research of human placenta and the bioidentical properties to placenta found in nature. High-potency, plant-powered formulas with clinically proven ingredients. Anti-aging is just not realistic, but healthy aging skin is. And it's why this brand is loved by dermatologists, plastic surgeons, estheticians for its healing ingredients and reduced downtime after procedures. It's my secret to glowing skin, even on my busiest days, my travel days, and my longest work days. Visit emkskincare.com to sign up for emails and receive 15% off your first purchase. Hey everyone, I'm Rainey Alfers, your host of Working Women Mentor, and I'm live with you on Season 5, Episode 1 with our very first guest. So it's a huge moment for us today, and I'm very excited to introduce you to Iliana Oris Valiente. She is an accomplished corporate executive, innovation, emerging tech pioneer, startup investor, respected board member, and a published author. I mean, can I say any more about Iliana? Except that we had an incredible conversation together that we're sharing with you today. This quote is my favorite. An expert at intersection of where technology and innovation is going and how humans thrive. If you all are thinking about AI, ChatGPT, automations, efficiencies, what the future is in tech, and maybe what that looks like to you, this is your episode. It is intriguing. It's warm. Her mentor moments are going to help you make that leap and that connection. So I'm not going to say anything else other than Ileana is a self-defined global citizen. And I think that perspective is a wonderful voice in today's world. And so I cannot wait to introduce you to Ileana. Ileana, thank you so much for joining us on Working Women Mentor. We really appreciate you being here. Would you please introduce yourself to our audience?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. My background is very random, professionally speaking, but my day job right now is as the managing director and head of innovation at Accenture in Canada. We're a massive global consulting and technology company, literally seventh in the world. So I spend my days working with large Fortune 500 companies, their senior executives and boards, helping them make sense of what's happening in the tech world, what's happening in terms of social trends, and what do they do with all of that.
When I think of what you do, the first word that came to my mind was you're a translator. You translated to this person and this person had so many different things going up. You have such a vast performance and a history in your career, and you do so many different things. But is there something about your younger years that brought you to where you are now?
Well, I have a very non-traditional life story. I mean, I'm half Russian, half Cuban by origin. I lived in Siberia and I also lived in Cuba. So those are two very different locations in every way you could possibly imagine. So from a very early age, I really leaned into the need to be adaptable. And I think I was always pretty adaptable at the core, but life is full of changes and you never know what's going to come your way. All you can really do is prepare yourself to be able to hit the ground running in whichever environment you end up finding yourself in. And so I find that resilience has affected every aspect of my life.
So I can totally see how just that cross-cultural, and then is there a point where you're just also trying to fit in and adapt to what was going around you, especially when you're younger?
The number of schools I've attended, the number of languages I've learned. I remember when we came to Canada and I was thinking to myself, okay, now I need to learn yet another language. This was my third language, and my first words in English were apple juice on the plane because I wanted to order something to drink. And my mother said, okay, well, you can order, but you have to order in English. said, well, I don't know English yet. And she says, well, you have a dictionary that we've gotten you. So go figure it out. And so
Wow.
I literally learned English by reading a dictionary.
Yeah, because a lot of people learn it from like watching soap operas or cartoons or different things when they come to the US learning English language. But I like your mom's mentality. She's like, figure it out. You've got the tools. I gave you a book. Now you can do it. You're on your way. So you went from moving here and moving to where you are now, moving away from everything you probably knew to now bridging the gap for people in your career. You're a public speaker, you have a history in tech and blockchain. And yeah, I have to start with like the tech side because so many people, when they hear the words blockchain, they're like, what? I still don't know after all these years what it means. It's almost a word that you say AI now, and everyone's like, oh, yeah, Chat GPT or Alexa or something. Blockchain still puzzles people. Would you enlighten us, Ileana? Like the layman's version, by the way, like what we can understand, the 101.
The layman's version. Yes, it's a new layer of the internet. That's really the easiest way to think about it. That layer can have a payments aspect, so you actually have money that's made for the internet. When you think about the way we transact today, there was no payments baked into the original version of the internet. If you wanted to tip your favorite creator a couple of cents or buy one article from a newspaper as opposed to subscribing, you actually can't do that today because it costs more to process that $1 payment than the value of that $1 payment. Whereas one of the things that blockchain tech enables, amongst many other applications, is the payments cryptocurrency layer. And so now you have what are called Web3 applications. So Web3 and blockchain are synonymous terms. And so you have applications that have a baked in payments component that allows you to do things that you couldn't do previously. It also allows for things like ownership of truly digital assets. So imagine there's a virtual artist, they create a beautiful graphic painting, you want to buy it from them, you buy it and you go to resell it at a later point in time. Well, you could actually bake in a little contract that automatically pays that artist a royalty when you go and you resell their work. Historically, artists haven't been able to make a living because by the time the art is worth a lot, there's no way for that original artist to be able to benefit from it. Then they're usually not, right? And so this is just a new layer of the internet that's being built out. Most consumers are not even going to know that they're using a Web3 powered or a blockchain powered application. That's my goal. My goal is for most people to not even have to know the words Web3. I don't want to be on a conference stage talking about it because it just fades into the background. Do you know how email works?
Yeah. No, I mean, I just think of like an exchange server or something, swapping information back and forth. I mean, that's like the simplest version.
But the fact that you even know the words exchange server, most people don't know that, nor do they need to know that in order for them to just use the internet and you send the email.
It's one of those things where when someone explains something, it's like, look, I don't need to know behind the scenes how it's made.
Exactly.
I'm from Louisiana. We would say how you make the sausage. So don't want to know. I just want to eat it and enjoy it. It's a really great explanation. So as things are evolving, you're trying to stay ahead. You're in a field that is rapidly moving. I can only imagine. I mean, what advice would you give us on staying ahead, keeping up even with this fast evolving technology and the world that we're living in today?
Mm-hmm. My one and only suggestion is just lean in. Change is hard. Change is scary. It requires using a part of the brain that requires you to navigate unfamiliar territory. And it's normal for people to want to bury their head in the sand and say, la, 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 this is not happening. I do not need to know about it. But the reality is, you do. And the only way that you really learn is you either surround yourself by people who are different from you, who are working in other areas that can introduce you to subjects that you wouldn't otherwise have paid attention to. And the next thing that you do is you roll up your sleeves and you experiment. I mean, ChatGPT announced a new feature. They announced an integration directly with Dolly. Dolly is a tool that allows you to create, literally generate a new image, a new graphic complex image by just typing in a couple of prompts. I'm not a visual designer. In fact, I can barely design a PowerPoint slide. That's the case with most people. I don't know how to use Photoshop. I can't use Illustrator because it just requires a certain level of skill of graphic design that I do not have. But I was able to use this feature 24 hours after it was rolled out, and I used it to design a Halloween costume.
Oh, I love that. How fun.
I'll send you the link to the video. It's on my Instagram, but I said something for an adult woman, something that I could wear, fashionable, inspired by a potted plant, a hibiscus flower. And the first images it generated, my jaw hit the floor. And then I said, well, hold on. I love that there's this image of a woman wearing this giant flower headpiece. And so I popped into Etsy to see, could I buy a fascinator or a headband? It hadn't even occurred to me to buy something like that. So I found a fascinator on Etsy and I went back into ChatGPT and said, great, if I buy an orange flower fascinator, can you tweak the costumes to incorporate that into the design? Bam, more options.
Boom.
And then I realized, okay, well, I have this other piece of clothing in my closet. What if I incorporated this into the design? Added a couple more prompts. I am now going to be dressing up inspired by these images, and then I'll take the before and after photo. As someone who doesn't love shopping, as someone who's not creatively inclined in air quotes in that way, this opens up a whole landscape of possibilities. So I turned around to my graphic designer in my team and said, listen, I know we've talked about this before, but I need you spending 50% of your time in your job figuring out all these Gen AI tools. That's it. No ifs, no ands, no buts. You are going to learn this, and then you are going to turn around and train every other person in our graphic design function in North America on these tools, because if we don't learn these tools, we are going to be disrupted. And that's what really, really drives me. I'm not interested in tech for the sake of tech trends or social trends for the sake of social trends. I'm interested in where is the future going and how can people prepare themselves for that future? And in that future, how can humans design a custom life for themselves that's worth living, that plays into their core strengths and competencies and what they really enjoy doing as humans, that plays to their natural strengths and gifts? That's really what I enjoy.
And I think you seem like a really curious person and you're creative in other areas. Like you, I couldn't draw anything visually, a little challenged, but the same thing, I'm so intrigued by what it does that it makes me want more and design things and link things together and webhook and zap them and you see how they all work. And so it is so fun to see, I think, what the future holds. And if we maintain this really positive attitude about it and this energy, can you imagine your graphic design team and, another year after they've catapulted with these tools? Wow. I mean, that's impressive.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, it frees up their time to then focus on activities that are the highest and best use of their time. That graphic designer on my team that I was telling you about, she really wants to do branding work. That's what she has expressed as her next career arc. And great, you can do that. Now that you're going to use all these AI tools to give you superpowers and to be so effective in what you're currently doing, now you have the time to learn the skills, to lean in, to do special projects that you wouldn't have had time for otherwise. So there's that extra silver lining towards leaning in and embracing the uncertainty.
And you are listening to your team, you're listening to what's going on out there in the world and bringing those together. And so you have a reputation as a speaker and professionally for connecting the dots for people. Tell us more about that.
One of the things I really enjoy doing, I joke that I collect interesting humans. And the ability to then introduce those humans to one another where the odds seem slim. I mean, I place on average one person into a new job every month for fun. I'm not a recruiter.
Just because you're like, I know you're good at this. I know it. I can see it.
Exactly. I once met somebody. I met a man on a beach in the Caribbean because his dog ran up to me. It was a cute little puppy. And we got to chatting. And as we got to talking about his career history, he was telling me about his wife, how they moved to the island. And it turned out that he had done a senior level role in the AI world and a senior level role in developer relations and had experience in the blockchain domain. And I'm looking at him and he's just told me that he's retired, like he's retired early.
Oh, wow.
I said, okay, that's wonderful, sir, but I actually have the perfect role for you. And he laughs and he says, haha, thank you, random stranger, but I'm quite good. I'm going to insist. I was just with the CEO of a company. They've raised another funding round. They need somebody that's exactly your profile. I'm going to introduce you to the CEO. All I need for you to do is just have one conversation. That's it.
Just listen. Yes.
And at one point, finally acquiesced and just gave me his contact details, probably because he just wanted to get rid of me at this point. Fast forward a month and a bit later, and I get an email from him saying, thank you. Today is actually my first day starting to work at this company.
Oh, I love that. Look, never know.
You never know where you're going to meet a person that is going to change the course of your career or your life or introduce you to a new concept. So talk to strangers.
I completely agree. It's what made me think of this mentor moment idea because we do meet people in these random spots and what we learn and what we give to them too, right? Look what you did in that particular moment. And on that note, I mean, mentorship is something that is a part of giving and receiving as well, and helping others and sharing what you know. Have you had someone in your career or personal life that stands out to you as your mentor, Ileana?
I do. I've had a couple of mentors actually, for which I'm very fortunate. And as I reflected on it, I realized that there was a trend. I had at least three separate mentors that would pull me aside or would be out having lunch. And they didn't know what they were doing at the time. I don't know if it was intentional, but it had an effect on me. Where one lunch in particular, he looks at me and he tilts his head to the side and says, so, Ileana, when are you leaving us? Excuse me. I'm looking behind me and I'm asking the question of, wait, am I getting fired? He says, no, I can't. You're one of my top performers. But he proceeds to go on and saying, you're meant for bigger and better things. You are not like everyone else that's working here and you can do this role and you're doing this well, but you have a whole other set of skills that I don't think you really recognize about yourself that others do not have. And I've heard something along those lines multiple times in my career from mentors. And I had one mentor that was the tipping point. And after a conversation, he comes to me and says, I have a book I need you to read. Okay. And the book is called Designing Your Life. And it's by two professors at Stanford, Bill Burnett, Bill Evans. And it's this concept of using the principles of design thinking methodology and applying them to someone's life, your work life, your personal life, your health, your hobbies. And I went away and I did all of the activities in the book, all of the prompts. And a couple months later, I went to him and I said, hi, thanks again for giving me that book. I have some news for you. He says, sure, what is it? And I said, I actually need to leave the organization. And he smiled and he said, I know.
Oh, he's like, it worked. I knew she would.
What do you mean? What do you mean? You know, he said, yeah, but I couldn't coach you and nudge you to leave the organization because he was a very senior partner. And he said, it's not in the best interests of the business for me to encourage you to leave.
Right. We did not want to be responsible for that when someone looked at him and said, how did you lose Ileana? Right.
Exactly. But he knew that I needed it for my own growth. I just couldn't quite see it. And now it's become one of the top books I recommend. And I am a huge advocate for people designing their own lives because we're all unique. No human is the same as another. Therefore, why should we all aspire to the exact same definition of success or to the exact same lifestyle? There is no one size fits all. And so I'm very passionate about helping other people really learn to understand themselves, understand the world around them, how it's changing, and then create that ideal arc of how they are living, how they're spending their time to be in alignment with who they are, because that's what my mentors, after, showing me the mirror time and time again within you that you're not leaning into.
So it sounds like you are mentoring in the same way because this has become who you are. How are you incorporating this into your teams and the people in your life? I mean, did they just come to you and you were just like, read this book and come back? How are you approaching mentorship right now, Ileana?
And coaching people is one of my absolute favorite things to do. I am the friend that people will call, not if they're having the crying meltdown. Usually they have other people that they'll call for that. I'm not usually on the receiving end of those, but they've done their crying meltdown. And then they call me and they say, Anna, what do I do next? I know that the situation I'm in right now is not the situation I want to be in. They may or may not have a picture of where they're trying to get to, but they know that they need to make a change. And I ask questions, question after question after question. And I'm usually pretty good at figuring out what the special sauce is in humans. And usually my questions aren't about their work. It's more about their life. And it's how do you want to spend your days? How do you want to spend your weeks? What are the moments that make you so excited where you lose track of time, and using that to combine with where the world is going to help them craft that ideal journey. So that's my general approach. And I use that with my friends. I use that with my teammates. I use that with people that don't report to me, but work in the organization, or they've heard about me and they just reach out. And it's so delightful to be able to give back in that way. And I've learned a lot about people over the years because on average, I think I met 1,500 people last year in 1 year.
So many. That's a lot. And you're just around
Hmm.
so many people, right?
Yeah,
And you put
exactly.
yourself around so many people, by the way. This is not just happening. And so, yeah, you're making it happen.
Exactly. And as a result of working with all of these people, meeting all of these people, I've actually developed a new theory that I am in the process of testing out and putting some real scientific research behind. And I've called it the potted plant theory. Really, it's this idea that humans can be placed on a spectrum and have a human tree archetype. On one side of the spectrum, you could have a sequoia tree. They're giant, they're beautiful, majestic trees with extensive roots. If you wanted to transplant a sequoia tree tomorrow, you couldn't because it's physically impractical. The tree would not survive, and there isn't machinery or humans big enough to move it. And then you move along the spectrum, and you could end up with a red maple tree. They're smaller. You can move them once, twice, maybe three times in their life tops. And you need the help of an arborist, a tree specialist. All of the conditions need to be met, but then that tree can learn to thrive in the new environment. You go further along the spectrum and you end up in potted plant territory. That's where I am. And if I had to choose a spirit animal, it would actually be a spirit tree, and I would be a hibiscus because you can grow it in a pot and you can move it room to room, city to city, country to country. It doesn't skip a beat. It's okay with cooler climates, warmer climates. And then if you take it out of the pot and you plant it into the ground, it will grow deeper roots. But it's one of the few types of tree species that you can then dig back up again and put into another pot so long as it's bigger because it's outgrown the original container. So the furthest end of the spectrum where it ends is in air plant territory. Do you know what an air plant is?
I don't.
If you've walked into a plant shop, they're usually hanging from the ceiling on a little rope in a little glass jar.
Yep. Okay. I've seen them.
They don't have big roots. They don't need a whole lot of water or soil or fertilizer. They don't need a whole lot of resources. And so you can place people on the spectrum across two different dimensions. One dimension is how many resources do they need in order to feel secure and established and to thrive? An air plant requires very few resources. A sequoia tree requires lots of land, lots of water, lots of fertilizer. And the other dimension is the need for novelty versus the need for certainty. A sequoia tree, the human plant archetype, is representative of somebody that has a high need for certainty. The air plants on the other extreme, highest need for novelty. I'm somewhere on higher on the novelty spectrum, fairly low on the resources requirement spectrum. And that explains why I thrive in a role like the one I have now, where I have so much context switching. I meet so many people. I do all of these projects. I've had global roles where I'm traveling to 2 countries in a week. And I love that. I thrive on it.
Yeah. And you love it. You thrive on it. The change. I have hibiscus is my favorite tea, and I have 2 of them outside of my front door and love them because they immediately respond to their environment as well. I feel like you put a little water in them and I've got these beautiful flowers just overnight. It's one of my favorite plants. I look forward to seeing more of the science on this because it seems like your view of people, your observations of people have probably changed over time. Has your idea of mentorship changed over time? Because usually we don't grow up thinking about a mentor, right? They just sort of come into our life and we realize it. But have you noticed the mentality of mentorship changing, or how has it changed for you?
That's actually a really good question that I've never thought about before. I think the best mentors are the ones that come into your life somewhat unexpectedly. I once went through a program early on in my career where I was matched with a mentor, and she was great on paper. She was a senior executive, she was in banking. And I remember going for lunch with her. I lived in Vancouver at the time. And at the lunch, I just felt so uninspired because I did not want her life at all. There was nothing about her life that appealed to me, even though on paper she was this really successful person, but she didn't have an energy. She didn't actually enjoy her life. I don't really want to continue to spend time with this person because I don't think this is who I want to be mentored by. And I think I broke a record because I was the only person that has ever unsubscribed from this really prestigious mentorship program. And I said, I do not need this.
Good for you. Isn't that interesting though? One of the common threads I hear is choosing that person that you connect with, that you aspire to be, that really you feel could help each other in a way. And you didn't feel it and you stuck with your instinct on that and you got the heck out of there.
We all have choice. And I think that's an understated thing. And it's almost as though I know a lot of your audience are women. We need to hear permission to allow ourselves to be and to choose and to decide. And your life has all of these doors and all of these pathways. And one is not better than the other, but one may be better for you than the other. And sometimes it's having the confidence to say no to opportunities to make room for something else. I remember at one point in my career, I was actually early on in the blockchain space trying to build out that business. And I got a phone call from the very senior partner that I worked with at the time. And he says, Ileana, I have the perfect job for you. Literally, I have created this role for you. He was about to undertake a tour through all of South America, like the Americas in general. And he wanted me to accompany him as a chief of staff because I speak Spanish, I love travel, I love asking questions. And he wanted me to be the chief of staff and to oversee the strategic program, to collect inputs from what was happening in all those regions and create a comprehensive strategy based on that. And I was sitting on the phone on the other end of him saying, okay, great. So when can you get back to Vancouver? When can we start this role? And I said, I don't know. And he was surprised by the response. He's like, what do you mean you do not know? This is literally your perfect role. And I said, I know. If this had been 6 months ago, I would have taken it in a moment. I wouldn't even have thought about it. But I'm at the beginning of this new thing in this new tech space. And I think I might be onto something. I don't know why. I don't have massive amounts of data to show you, but it's just this gut instinct. And if I don't follow my instinct, I don't know if I'm going to get an opportunity like this ever again. And I had to turn down this dream role offer. And I didn't know if it was the right choice. And I would not have known if it was the right choice for years. And now I'm glad I made that decision. But at the time, it was hard.
When did you know it was the right choice? Like, did you know it when you turned it down? Or did you know it when the next day when you started working on blockchain and your tech business again? Like, when did it hit you that it was like, I did do the right thing?
So I didn't have any external validation for quite some time, but I had a lot of faith in myself that something was going to work out. And even if it didn't work out, where was the downside? I'm a chartered accountant by training. I had experience in corporate finance and a whole host of other roles. I'm fairly personable. So, like, what is the worst case scenario if this new venture that I'm working on completely flops? I'll always be able to get another role, but it's not every day that you find yourself on the cusp of an entire new technological revolution. And so a couple of years later, I got a phone call from that same partner, and he says, "So I have a client, very senior executive client, that has called me, and he asks if I know you and if I would be able to broker an introduction. Would you take his phone call?" And I said, "Yes, of course." And on the inside, I
Ah.
was just clapping for myself. Okay, I think I made the right decision.
And that's a great distinction, Ileana, to say that you didn't get external validation quickly. Because sometimes we're looking for that, right? We make these choices. And then when there's a time period, a long time period, that's when we may start second guessing ourselves or wondering internally if we did do the right thing. So I love that you are vocal about, well, it didn't come immediately. Be patient, trust your instinct, right? It did work out and your
Mhm.
choice happened, but it could take a couple of years. You never know. I think hearing that more
Absolutely.
is important. It's really important. We talk about what women are working on, and you're working on so many different things, but you're a board member. And I know that many women right now are looking actually for roles to participate, be on a board. Not only is it great for the organization itself, for that diverse leadership and input, it's wonderful for our own learning experience, making an impact. So, would you speak on that for a bit? Because I know there are some women listening who'd like to get involved and know a little bit more how that works.
Absolutely. So I sit on a few boards right now, including at Sunnybrook Hospital, which is one of the largest hospitals in Canada and considered one of the top 20 hospitals globally. So we're a massive organization. And I'm also on the board or council of CPA Ontario because I'm a chartered accountant by training. And now I'm here shepherding the future of the profession into the future and figuring out what does an accountant need in their toolkit? What are the skills that they need to learn? How do we train them so that we continue to be really relevant advisors across the businesses that we work in or consult to, and a couple of other organizations? So for your listeners, there are really two types of boards. The first boards are in the nonprofit sector, and the second type of boards are those for profit companies. So one is a volunteer board, and the other is a paid board position. Typically, the pathway is you need to do the volunteer boards first, get the experience, get the governance experience, understand the process to then lay the foundation to get the corporate paid boards. And board positions don't just appear and they don't fall out of the sky. And a lot of women make the mistake, a lot of people make the mistake of saying, I'm going to wait until I retire. And then when I retire, I will sit on boards. But if you haven't started doing board work while you're working, how is anyone going to magically find you when you have retired? There are also recruiters that specialize in board placements. There's a different format for a board resume. It's not your traditional board resume. And so there's this whole other world around board placements that is a black box for most people. And you have to let people know that you're open to new roles. For example, in my case, my nonprofit board slate is full. I don't have the capacity to take on anything else. And I know that my next steps are the bigger corporate boards because I advise those boards in my day-to-day roles. And they look at me and you have to figure out what's your core competency and the core thing that you can bring to a board. Because when you're a board member, you're not part of the executive management team. You are not doing, quote unquote, the work. The expression is board members need to have their fingers out and their noses in.
I like that.
You're nosy, you ask questions, you're thinking, you're scanning the outside world, you're making sure that the organization is managing risks appropriately and is going to survive the next 1 year, 3 year, 5 year. That's the objective of the board member. It is not about your ability to roll up your sleeves and execute on specific work. That's the management role.
That is a great distinction because people are used to managing and doing. And to your point, a board is completely different. And so, how are you noticing more women on boards?
It's slowly starting to come about, but we need the women to raise their hands. There are training programs that exist. Women Get on Board programs. In Canada, it's the Institute of Corporate Directors that does a certification process. And then it's demonstrating that you have your unique value proposition that you can add to a board that is not related to your ability to do a specific task. So for myself, my unique value prop, if you will, is that I represent innovation, I represent tech, I represent where the world is going, but I also represent gender diversity, geographical diversity, and age diversity. So when I'm on the hospital board, I'm closer in age to all of our healthcare staff than most of the board members. We had a conversation recently where we were talking about AI, and I was really pushing for it to be used in some of our back office functions at the hospital, recognizing that we're not going to have more people that we're going to just be able to hire indefinitely. We need to figure out how we can do more with fewer resources. And because I'm experimenting in that in my days, I can bring that insight to a boardroom. The skills that if your listeners have experience in risk management or talent development and leadership or strategy or financial reporting, dealing with M&A transactions, corp dev, those are all the types of skills that boards are looking for. So encourage your listeners to do that inventory of themselves.
I think that's great advice. And I'm wondering, with all that you do have going on from boards to your daily life, how do you unwind at the end of the day? What are you enjoying right now in your personal time, Ileana?
So while I'm not artsy, I do enjoy painting. It's abstract paint, so you really can't go wrong. But what I discovered with abstract painting is when you paint, you really can't multitask. Usually in my case, I'm covered to my elbows in paint because I can't do this as a neat activity. And then it forces you out of being on your phone, and you just have to be zen and you have to be right there and in that moment. So that tends to be one of my outlets.
Did you start with like a paint by number class and you're like, hey, this actually works? What made you get out the paintbrushes and start your craft?
So, funny story. I was at a friend's bachelorette many years ago, and they did a live painting class with a model, and we were sketching the model. I was like, oh gosh, I don't know how this is ever going to work out. I haven't touched a paintbrush since high school, where frankly, it was my worst class, and I may or may not have had friends helping me with my assignments because I knew my strengths. So I was like, I'll help edit your English papers if you help me with these things, right? The exchange barter system,
That's right.
live and in action. And at first, my painting looked like a 5-year-old had vomited all over a canvas. And then at one point, the bachelorette came by and she's like, Ileana, you're painting, and it actually looks kind of like the model. I was like, oh, you're right. I don't know what happened. So fast forward a couple of years, and right before the pandemic, I realized I had no hobbies. The pendulum had swung too far in the work, which I loved and really enjoying it. We've all been there. And there was a little magazine that got sent, and I got it in the mail. And normally I just chuck it into the recycling bin. And it shows all of the continuous learning programs for adults. And this one time I was like, let me just see what's out there. And I went in alphabetical order. The first thing I saw was abstract art painting. And I said, this doesn't really require any skills.
You stopped at number 1. That was in the A's.
It was in the A's. It was literally the first thing that I saw. And I was like, wait, I held the paintbrush. That was actually kind of fun. I wasn't atrocious, but with abstract art, you can't be wrong. Okay, let me try it. And did it not?
Oh, eye of the beholder. Or a good reminder, by the way, to find a hobby. Pick up a paintbrush, just do something. Take a break. Take a break every now and then.
Yeah. But I mean, sometimes, and I have a feeling a lot of your listeners are overachievers, always focused on doing. You don't always have to be doing. We're human beings, not human doings. And sometimes I unwind, truthfully, by closing the blinds, turning off the lights, and just sitting in silence on the couch for hours. I'm not on my phone. I'm not reading. I'm just staring at a wall. Or if I do have the window open, I'm just staring out the window. And sometimes that's all you need. And that's okay, right? You should do that too. Just be.
Just be, just be. So on that note, our last question, Ileana, is what is your mentor moment that you're going to leave our audience with today? It's that one takeaway, that something they might have come to this podcast for that might change their trajectory.
For me, it's all about life design, right? And what I would encourage your listeners to do is when you press pause on this podcast, and after you press, like and follow and subscribe and the rest of it, and leave a review, after you're done listening to this podcast, turn off all the distractions and just sit with yourself and ask yourself the question of, are you truly happy? Are you spending your days in the way that you want to be spending your days? Are you getting enough novelty? Are you getting enough of a sense of certainty? Are you feeling fulfilled? And if the answer to those questions is anything but a resounding yes, give yourself permission to keep questioning, because life is short. I'm going to die one day. You're going to die one day. We're all going to die one day. That's a certainty, death and taxes. But on the time that you are on this planet, you have permission to go live your best life. And there's no playbook for it. You can create it. You can experiment with it. But you've got this.
Very well said. And with so much vision to the future and thought behind it. So Ileana, you've been a wonderful guest today. Where can everyone find you and follow your journey?
So they can follow me on Instagram or LinkedIn. I tend to post a lot of tech trends and social trend content, but also ideas for lifestyle design. And I'll be posting more information there about the potted plant theory. If anyone is interested in learning more about the potted plant theory, they can go to the website, pottedplanttheory.com, and we're launching a quiz to help people figure out where on that spectrum they fall, because I think the more people understand themselves, the better they'll be able to relate to others and live a good quality life. Better decisions you can make.
I love that. Ileana, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.
Before you go, a huge thank you for being a part of this episode. I hope it left you with a spark of inspiration. And if you haven't already, hit that follow button and subscribe button to stay connected. Now is a great time. Your reviews are the heartbeat of our podcast. So if you enjoyed what you heard today, a review would really mean the world to us. Let's keep this conversation going as well on Instagram at Rainy Alphers. Visit us at rainyalphers.com for all episodes, show notes, and also to express your interest to be a guest. Please sign up. We'd love to hear from you. And until next time, I'll see you back on Working Women Mentor.